right, we're good to go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2013 CES. We are thrilled to have you here. We are thrilled to host a FutureCast event as part of our Technology Innovators keynotes, particularly since this one focuses on the impact of mobile technologies. With 50 billion smart mobile devices forecast to be in people's hands by 2020, this technology will fundamentally change the world in ways that we can predict and in ways that we cannot yet comprehend. And it is an extraordinary honor to have three executives as distinguished as Ericsson CEO Hans Vestberg, Qualcomm CEO Paul Jacobs, and AT&T Senior Executive Vice President John Donovan, all together on a single stage. So, without further ado, let me hand you over to Andrew Keen, the FutureCast Executive Director and presenter of the Keen On Telecrunch TV show, and your moderator for today's salon-style interactive conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. I feel like I'm in a Rolling Stones concert, and I won't say who is Keith Richards on this panel. So first, a little bit of housekeeping. This is what I'm supposed to read. Attention, please. Filming of a program is taking place in this area. By attending this session, you hereby grant Andrew Keen Productions, Inc. the right, but not the obligation, to film, photograph, and/or record you in connection with the creation and distribution of FutureCast materials without compensation, this is of course the free economy, across all media. You release Andrew Keen Productions, Inc. and the Consumer Electronics Association from any and all liability related to use of this recording.
What about the rest of us?
Well, I haven't finished yet. If you do not agree, please exit this area. I don't know.
No, you know. Okay.
So before we start, or as we start, I want to, many of you, we've got some people, particularly in the front, who have attended our FutureCast events. They are hosted by Ericsson and AT&T at the Foundry in Palo Alto, the AT&T Foundry. The events are very interactive. We bring together 50 or 60 illustrious investors and entrepreneurs to talk about how technology is changing the world. This is a FutureCast series, but to get you all in the mood, we've made a short video of FutureCast highlights from 2013, which will introduce, I hope, some of the themes. So can we run the video, please?
Donald Kettle years ago wrote a book, and in this book there was something no one really paid attention to. Tim O'Reilly pulled it out years ago. God bless Tim. Where Kettle described government as a giant vending machine. You put in $1 taxes, and you get limited choices: police, fire, healthcare, education, national defense. If you don't like what you get, you shake the machine, you kick it. You've all done it, right? You vote in new party, you protest. But it's machine thinking, it's assembly line thinking, it's the old industrial model. Again, you vote, we decide. You were inert through the entire process of determining what's in the machine. You just paid your damn taxes. That's the old machine thinking. Now, platform thinking is Steve Jobs. The old phone was machine. Wasn't anything in there. Just, here's what you get. You know, like go to Motorola, go to another company, you'll just get that. You get a little bit different. All of a sudden, he comes up with a new platform. When Jobs, you remember this, when he came out with a new iPhone, he didn't come out with 800,000 apps. He didn't come out with 1,000. He came out with a few just to taste, give you a taste of it. Didn't even have apps, right? So you know better. And all of a sudden, and Jobs, I think, paraphrasing him, he said, forget the invention of this technology. It's going to be the users of the technology that are going to provide the great breakthroughs. He figured that out right away.
Yep. The disruption that's already happened to the workplace, let me show you, illustrate by example. 5 years ago, it's unlikely that most of the people here would check email every 10 seconds. Right? Now, I'll bet everyone here has a smartphone, that they're connected all the time. They're connected to their work all the time. The workplace has indeed changed, that we've now become connected. Your bosses now expect you to be available 24 hours a day. The workplace has already changed.
Does that make the office redundant?
Well, it does. This is why you can have open spaces like this. This is why people work from home. You can have telepresence robots by which you simply have a little robot-like thing that walks around and talks to people and goes into meetings. You don't have to commute to work anymore.
Well, technology is where you will actually change the world. So I've decided to actually quit my job, take a break, and upgrade myself.
I don't know if you know this, but 4 companies have announced that they'll have automated driving cars in the market within the next 12 months. Audi, Mercedes, BMW, and Volvo. Volvo. And in Audi's case, it drives up to 39 miles an hour on Bayshore. We're about to enter into this great social experiment because you're still responsible.
Well, there's 5 things that are joining together, right? We're getting sensors all over the place. If you go to Autodesk, another San Francisco company, they put sensors in all their buildings, right? You're getting more wearable computers, right? So things on our wrist, things on our face, things. I know of a startup coming out in a couple months that has 14 sensors on a shirt to study bodybuilding, and another startup is coming out with shoes with 100 sensors to understand how you run or walk. Add on the social network data. This little company in Twitter, right? San Francisco started, has 500 million tweets a day, and it's doubling every 14 months. So in 14 more months, it'll be 1 billion tweets a day. Add on location data like Waze and Foursquare and Facebook check-ins. You mix those 5 things together, and we're going to get a new kind of...
What do you have? You have the NSA, don't you?
Basically.
Let me start the guys off with an easy question. Mobile is changing the from what we've seen. Mobile's changing the automotive industry. It's made the office redundant or making the office redundant. It's changing the nature of innovation. Mobile is everywhere. It's ubiquitous. So, Hans, do we even need a word called mobile?
Yes. I think that when we look out in the world right now and take a global picture of mobility and what's happening, I mean, today, some 7 billion mobile subscriptions in the world, 85% of the Earth population has mobile coverage. That's pretty much. Still, the majority has voice and 2G. And what we're now deploying in the whole world is 3G and 4G. And by 2019, 7 billion mobile broadband subscriptions will exist. And that means that we're going to have 3 times as many people on this earth having access to internet. So whole that is built on mobility. Then some markets are ahead of that, and we're sitting in one of them. I mean, US is in the lead on 4G together with some others like Korea and Japan, but clearly US is in the lead. Smartphones today, we believe that everyone has a smartphone. That's not true. So it's a lot more mobility that's going to happen. I think the combination of mobility, broadband, and the cloud, that will transform any business, anything that you have today, that can be transformed. So I think that talking about mobility will be extremely important in the future as well, because that's going to be the enabler.
I think the question is going to be actually whether we need wires, right? Because we're taking this mobile technology, what we're going to see over the next couple of years is actually the embedding of mobile technology into fixed things, like you heard people in the video talking about sensors and wearables and all these kinds of things that are in the environment around you. They're still fixed, they're not mobile, but they benefited from the huge R&D investment that we've made as an industry to reduce the cost and improve the performance of all these chips and technologies, and now they're going to go and enable connectivity and all these other kinds of things. So it's really mobile technology, but not mobile.
John, do we need mobile still as a word, or is it everything?
No. We're a mobile broadband company, but I think at some point, let me first say the physics in the ground are better than physics in the air for the economics of delivering packets in long distances. So you're always going to have, a ground network. We're going to get more fiber, deeper everywhere. And then the last little bit, if you look at our network, when I joined AT&T almost 6 years ago, I think the average packet on a wireless network traveled a little over 5 miles. Today, the average packet travels slightly over 2 miles. It means our network is getting denser and denser and denser. And so, what we've discovered, Andrew, is that when you give people freedom to consume bandwidth, to get information, then they will use it. They will use it in an elevator, they'll use it in the garage basement, they'll use it in the restroom. And when we first started as a street-based mobile technology, that meant we were moving, The uses now are mobile, they're nomadic, wireless, cordless. You know, shoot, the cordless phone is one of the greatest inventions of all time, but we don't have anybody up here because no one got rich on it. But that allowed people to walk around the house and use their phone, and what we saw is the usage exploded. Yeah. So when you give people that freedom, then they consume.
So John, I was at your developers conference over the last couple of days, and you made a very interesting announcement about automotive. You're doing a lot in the home. What are you most excited about when it comes to the way in which mobile is changing the world? What sector? What really gets you going?
Well, I think right now I look at these big opportunities, and maybe we could call it the fourth wave of wireless, these new businesses, as just eliminations of steps. So what I'm excited about is removing me from things I don't need to be involved in. I would like my machines to talk to my other machines and coordinate things. And so if I do a search on my home computer in the evening and I end up on a destination, I shouldn't have a separate programming exercise with my car that moves my content from my DVR to the back seat so the kids can watch it, nor my route and all those things. I just want my machines to coordinate with my other machines and leave me out of it. And so what I'm excited about is a concept that David Christopher uses all the time, our marketing folks, is that the mobile phone moves as a remote control for your life.
I love that phrase. The remote, you should all write that down if you haven't heard it. The phone is the remote control for your life. Paul, are you excited about being eliminated?
That's funny on many dimensions.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're talking about John. Take over for me, or
John.
Which part am I getting eliminated from?
John made the point that he was very excited about being eliminated from the process of automation of technology. Is that? Do you think that's exciting?
Well, you know, we've done a lot of work on that. We have this all-join technology, which allows all these different devices across different silos to talk to each other. Because if you think about the Internet of Everything, you know, we're talking about lots of vertical industries that have built up all of these different things, protocols that all talk to each other, and you needed something that was going to cut across all of those things. And so, yeah, we've built technology that does that. It's open source now, so we're not trying to control it. We're just trying to sort of get the tide to rise, and hopefully a lot of people get involved in that. And it's gone into the Linux Foundation, so the Linux Foundation is now running this.
But what area really excites you is?
I think short term, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. The vision that we're really focused on right now is this notion of the digital sixth sense, which is the idea that the devices that we carry allow us to perceive directly the cyberspace things that are around us. So when you think about the Internet of Everything and sensors and actuators and all services, all these kinds of things around us, how do we actually interact with those? And so it goes along with this notion of being remote control, but it's also this notion of perception and the notion of how do I authenticate? When I get into my car, I want to be able to use the buttons and the speakers and the microphones and all that stuff. When my friend gets into my car, I want them to be able to use that too, but when they get out of my car, I don't want them to be authorized to be listening to me over that microphone that's in my car. So this notion that we'll come together, create authenticated groups, share things, interact with the world, be able to talk to the screens, the microphones and things like that, go into a store, talk to the cash register, get offers, things like that. But then when I leave, those things go away. So this idea of proximity and being able to perceive the cyberspace notion of the world that's around us, I think that's very, very exciting.
Hans, is the phone going to be the center of our lives? Or could it be, I mean, at the AT&T hackathon, they had smart hats, smart hoodies, smart glasses. Does it have to be the phone?
I think that we have our consumer lab that is doing research on consumers all around the world in different markets. I think a lot comes to the conclusion that John talks about, that you don't want to have 15 different devices that have different type of connectivity. One will be somehow a remote, and I think that's, so we agree to that, and it seems like consumers doing it as well. But sometimes it's hard to really see what is a connected device 10 years from now. I mean, what is exciting me, I mean, is very much that any industry leader you will meet today in any industry, they are thinking about what can I do with mobility, broadband, and the cloud. How can I transform my business? And if it's transport or cars, or if it's a logistic company, if it's a TV company, media, all of them are thinking about it. 5 years ago, this was a discussion between a company like Ericsson and an AT&T and a Qualcomm, and then you have the ecosystem. Today, it has to be a car manufacturer, it has to be a logistic companies or whatever. That is exciting me. I mean, just meet the people doing bearings for a while ago, you know. I mean, they are thinking about how can you put the sensor in the bearings connected to the network so they know exactly how the bearing, the performance on the bearing. I mean, who can think about that? These guys sitting and thinking about how to use the wireless networks in order to have better performance for the consumers on the bearing. So everyone is thinking about that. Is what's exciting me. Of course, doing networks all around the world, this is what we are doing.
Yeah, and I've been, you know, I've dealt with your networks. I've been to your network society headquarters in Stockholm. I've talked to the guys. You do tremendous research in that area. Talk a little bit, Hans, about some of the specific initiatives in healthcare, for example. I know you guys are also interested in talking about healthcare, in education, in smart cities. What do you think is an area, perhaps there are some young entrepreneurs in the audience who want to come up with a new idea, a new area to innovate? What really excites you?
We just spent some 24 hours with thought leaders from the whole world on on cities. I mean, just give you two facts. I mean, by 2050, 70% of the Earth population will live in big cities. I mean, enormously. I mean, in order to cater for the infrastructure in those cities is basically impossible. I think somebody calculated you need 9 planets. Then you need to start thinking about innovation. And innovation will, of course, come from when you start using technology in a totally different way in the cities. Maybe you don't own your own car. It's car sharing, of course, built on mobility network, even driverless cars. You need to have sensors connecting when you use the power grid. You need to think totally different if this planet is going to survive. And that are the things that we are sort of trying to get inputs from different stakeholders to understand how you need to build the networks in the future. So that's just one example. Then you can take education. We all know that education, and John and I had a discussion yesterday, how you can transform and do education totally different today, digitally, and what is needed from networks, video conferencing, all of that. So I think that's what we are exploring a lot to understand how we're going to spend our $5 billion a year in research and development so the networks can handle it, so John and his customers can actually get benefit from it. I think that's what's exciting me when you go into this second phase, which we call the networked society.
John, you're well known as the sort of the visionary who has sort of started the foundries. How does innovation, AT&T, and the foundries fit into Hans's vision of the future of smart cities, of smart cars, of smart healthcare?
Well, I think that the foundry for us started as a physical manifestation of a new way to work, and that is collaborative. And if you walk into Palo Alto today, we do projects with Paul's folks, we do projects with Hans's folks, and you can't tell who works for whom. And you saw the hackathon yesterday.
Yeah, and, everybody wears hoodies.
Yeah, yeah. and long hair and those sorts of things. They all pass drug tests, though. I want to make you aware of that. It does narrow our recruiting some. But what it does for us, Andrew, is that we now have adopted that foundry approach into our entire real estate model for the entire company. Today we have 52 million square feet of real estate space. And what we've said is that if you're working by yourself, work from home. When you need to collaborate with people, go into these kinds of facilities where ideas happen. We have creative space, we have project space. And so for us, it's revolutionizing how we work. And then it gets into all of these reinforcing loops that Hans and I talked about last night. Is my biggest concern. You have 240,000 employees that need to make a giant pivot inside the company. We need to provide a MOOC equivalent that allows them to change their lives. So their real estate has changed, their performance management has changed, their career paths have changed, and it's a lot to absorb.
Paul, are companies like Qualcomm, obviously Ericsson and AT&T, are you making the office redundant?
No, I mean, I think that you need to have critical mass sometimes, and there are certain projects where they work better when you can wander down the hall and just run into somebody and sort of manufacture serendipity, and that does help a lot. And in fact, when we built global offices for Qualcomm, we started out trying to have them be sort of amorphous things where people sort of were just part of one team or another. We actually found out what worked better for us was that when we gave offices a mission, so that there was a critical mass of people in a certain area, they would interact better and more things would get done. So, you know, there's this thing, the world is flat. People say that. I actually think the world is pretty lumpy, and there are some places where you do want to gather people together. Now, with that said, there's a lot that you can do virtually, and there's a lot that you can do more in team spaces than in individual spaces. Qualcomm started out, it was pretty much every engineer had their own office. The engineers don't even prefer now to have their own office. They prefer to be in more communal spaces. And if you go into our buildings and you see the size of some of the labs, I mean, they stretch the entire length of a multiple football field building. And so people are just in there, they work together, but that notion that they'll run into each other and sort of collaborate and serendipity happens, I think that's still important.
Hans, can you engineer serendipity? You're the engineering expert here.
Thank you. I think that the important is, of course, I agree first of all with Paul very much. You need a different setup for different type of innovations. What we saw yesterday from the hackathon, you saw that nowadays you can build a company on 1 or 2 people because the barriers has gone down so dramatically because internet, mobility, broadband. You can set up a company so bloody quick today. But if you then work in areas like we are doing, long-term research project, you need team building, you need constant improvements on software, you need to be close to each other and work to each other. So I think you're going to find different models for different purposes. And I think that Paul is saying we are finding the same way. Then we're doing a lot of this sort of development or co-work together with customers like AT&T, etc. And I think that is sort of a way to get both input to us, ourselves, what we need to do better, but also, of course, be part of something bigger. And I mean, think about this. I mean, when you go into this second phase, I always talk about the 2 phases of this sort of technology revolution. I mean, it's normally not given that the winners in the first phase are the winners in the second phase. And that's what at least we are feeling in Ericsson. We were winners in the first phase. We built all the networks. If we're now going to play in the second phase, we need to transform dramatically quickly. We need to change. We need to work with our customers that are moving because the demands are different. The data
Define the difference between this first and second stage. Are we moving now? Are we finished with the first stage?
We are in the middle of the inflection point from going from installation of the technology to going to deployment and how you use it. This is, at least from a theoretical point of view.
So this is when the fun starts?
Yeah, this is when we're going to use the networks in a totally different way. Remember, we built all the networks for one service. Which was that? Voice. If you have a smartphone, you spend 70% of the time on the smartphone doing something else than doing a phone call.
John, first, second stage, you agree with Hans's point?
It's hard not to agree with Hans. We tend to follow his stuff. Like every year we come here.
You
we
can't
look at
disagree with Swedes. Look how tall they are. You've got to be careful around them.
No, the Viking look.
Exactly.
I had to go to pocket
hat with the
the last 2 years. I had to do pocket squares and cufflinks. Now I have to grow my hair out. I have to draw the line down. No, however you chop this thing up, we're going from where the network itself and its performance characteristics are less relevant than the functionality of using it.
And what does AT&T look like in this second stage? Does it become a technology company?
It becomes a more software-oriented technology company that's in the business of solutioning for its customers. And I think that's not always a customer ownership issue. Part of what we do in hackathons and such is to just help people create and facilitate where they create, and that you learn how to better enable your network so they can create. And so those sorts of things are what we're all about. And you can't sit and say, here are the services that belong on this network. We operate very open. We're very API-centric, as you've seen, and we want to let people create, and all we want is be the connection of choice.
25 years ago, you guys have been around a long time. If 25 years ago I said to you 3 of the most prominent figures in wireless technology would have sat on stage at CES and spoken about hacking, you would have looked at me as if I was insane. I mean, you already are. But Paul, what is this hacking fetish? You guys were involved in the hackathon yesterday too.
Yeah, don't say we were involved in the hacking.
That's another thing. Yeah, exactly.
That would have been
hackathon and hacking.
Another one of my. I think this may be the last one.
I got eliminated.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, you can always become a hacker. Right?
Yeah. Go get a hoodie. I got to get a hoodie, though.
An intelligent one. But seriously, do all companies have to get into this sort of hackathon business of continually reinventing technology?
Especially in this industry, things are moving incredibly quickly, and you don't know necessarily where the next great idea is going to come from. So you play a little bit of a portfolio game. You build platforms that people can innovate on. In fact, I mean, Qualcomm's not that well known to consumers because that's all we've done through the history of our company is try and build platforms that partners can build on. And it just turns out now, as Hans was saying, it takes fewer and fewer people to do something pretty dramatic in the world now. So you get bright people together, they got a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and you give them some platforms to build stuff on, and they will do things that you did not expect when you designed the technology, and that's what's so cool about these hackathons.
Hans?
Yes.
And this is very public, so you can't
It's
hide on
very
this
public.
one. I think this is being live streamed as well to the world.
Okay.
And you've released him from
Just
liability.
say no comment
so.
right now, Hans. You're safe.
I got to
If
read
you
this
do not
paper
agree,
again. No, I can leave.
you can exit the area.
So tell me an area that's exciting that this audience doesn't know about. I mean, we all know about healthcare. We all know about smart cities. We all know about automotive. But what's under the radar? What is going to be the big thing at CES in 3 or 4 years?
I have 2 comments. I'm going to answer another question first because I think John was into it. Just in this second phase, we can also see that carriers are sort of taking different strategies. And I think that we just want to come back to what my colleagues are saying, that what we see right now in the world, I mean, some operators, they go for a model where they're going to optimize the network, and that's the only thing they're going to do. Then you have others that really going to embrace and be part of all industries, and I think that AT&T is a good example of that. So we are seeing in this second phase also that the operators are taking very different routes based on their assets, how great they are, what customers they have. So we're also going to see a differentiation how our customers are investing. We have not seen that in our industry before. I mean, we basically have had operators all around the world doing similar things, more successful or less successful. Now we see them taking different decisions. I mean, not all are doing hackathons and making APIs on the networks. That's some operators are not doing it. So I think that is.
But should they all be doing it?
No, I don't think so. I think they know their strategy better than I do because they know their market. I think it's going to be based on their strength and what position they have in the market and the asset they have, rather than saying that this one model is the right for everyone. So I think just a comment on what we're seeing in this second phase. We're going to see it, and that's why you see vendors like Ericsson, others starting with N, etc. They are changing strategies because we are in the middle of this change. So I think it's pretty logical for me, everything, even though it feels so illogical.
So Andrew, if I could maybe jump in. If you look at the hackathons that we've put together, the format, this week we had roughly 600 committed people that came and wrote code. We had 107 submissions. Over 50 of those were finished products. Maybe not go-to-market ready, but finished products put together in 48 hours. And what we had for them was materials. You saw it. We had soldering stations, sewing machines, fabrics, GPS sensors. And you look at what came out of that. Someone took the bunny ears and created an alert alarm that allows for train operators or whatever to get their brain patterns. And when they get out of brain pattern where it appears boredom is setting in, an alarm goes off. Somebody else came in and put together a really fashionable necklace to protect kids on field trips. Someone else came in and built their own ATM because they were tired of paying ATM fees for small amounts of money.
Does anyone need to borrow any money, by the way?
Yeah, so these are not clever, creative things. You know, probably the most challenging technically is a group came in, took a watch and the accelerometer and built a feedback system with speech algorithms that said whether they were signing correctly. It would repeat back the sign language that they did. And all of these could be foundations for companies. It's extraordinary, and I think Paul said it well. You can now, with a very small group of committed people and the right set of tools on top of the technology, you can do extraordinary things.
But Hans, you've still got to answer my question.
Yes, I know. But he stole it in the middle there, so now I'm back. Okay. So what is exciting in the future?
What was the question again?
What was the question? I'm still thinking about the answer.
The question is, surprise us. Don't talk about smart cities. Don't talk about healthcare, don't talk about education.
He's surprising you right now.
Ever seen this one?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a dot.
This is a dot, the Ericsson radio dot system. I think that a lot of all the traffic is going to be indoor. I think this is the greatest innovation we have done in many years. I think we have done a lot of things, but the Ericsson dot system is...
it looks very sophisticated.
It's a small cell. It's a small radio cell that can carry 4G traffic. You just put an Ethernet cable into this one and you can have a better coverage in here because a lot of all the coverage is going to be inside. And I think that's something that I know that John are working with and many carriers, the densification, the small cells. I think that I'm so proud of the Ericsson team that has come up with a totally unique solution.
So is this the next 5 billion? Does this allow everyone to get online?
I think that this will definitely help it to get much more coverage and much better contiguous coverage and services that's going to be the same indoor as outdoor. I think this is something we have worked for 2 years to come up with. There are plenty of others. We're now showing connected papers in our booth down here, so you can start connecting papers. So, you know.
So Hans cheated a bit because I should have said, talk to me about something that your company hasn't produced. But to be fair, I didn't put that caveat in. But
no, you did not.
So, but I am going to with you guys. Tell me about stuff that you think is going to be really exciting that we don't know about yet. Tell me about the future.
Well, one of the things that we're working on that's cool and scary at the same time is called neuromorphic computing. So we've had, over the years, a very traditional model for computing, and it uses a lot of power and takes up space. And even though we've shrunk the computers down so that you put them in your pocket, they still run out of battery. They use a lot of power. And your brain, though, uses like 25 watts. And so we started studying what happens if you build brains in silicon. And
wow.
You use models of insects, for example. A wasp has 40,000 neurons in it, an ant has 1 million neurons in it. And those things do some pretty sophisticated stuff. They're sort of sensor packages. They're out there, they're sensing the environment, they're analyzing, and they're reacting. And when we think about this Internet of Everything, you want those things to be very low power, those sensors that are out in the environment. They're going to need to do some degree of data reduction so that they can figure out, is something interesting happening, and do I need to fire off, spend my power to send a signal out to the outside world to say, hey, listen to me, something's going on. So we've been building these things, and when the guys first came to me, they built a retina, and it had certain properties, and they showed it optical illusions, and it did optical illusions. I said, I can get that. I can see why that would happen for the local reasons that you put into these neurons. Then they put layers behind it, and pretty soon it started recognizing things. And now we actually have algorithms, but it's not even an algorithm per se. It's a brain that was taught. It wasn't even programmed. It was taught, and now it follows objects in a way that a normal computer vision algorithm can't do. So it already works better than a computer vision algorithm.
John, beat that. I bet you can't.
Well, I want to first reinforce it, though, because I love the concept of we as human beings having hardware and software, and instead of that woman saying she's going to upgrade herself, that actually you'd be able to do a quick software upgrade. But I do think in this...
Some of us need it more than others, right?
Yeah. You can get an attitude adjustment along with it. I think there's apps for that. But
you hired him. You can give him an attitude adjustment quickly.
That was part of the contract. I didn't read that out.
No, but I do think, though that that is an area that's indicative of everywhere. But if you say, where is something that's tangible and real, I think we're at the tip of the iceberg on the car. And I think that one of the things that you'll see is that now we're seeing a bunch of car here. There's cars everywhere. You look out on the showroom floor, there's cars everywhere. We're just on the tip of the iceberg, but everybody's in. And when everybody gets in, and the innovators do it, and you get the right platform thinking, and then everybody starts to rally around it, I think 3 years from now, the car will blow us away. Our lives will move in there. It can be educational pods during the commute. It can be all kinds of things and get us out of this idea of let me kill some time on a 30-minute drive. It'll be a productivity experience if you want it. It'll be an entertainment experience. But I think the car is really set to transform in a very big way.
The other thing we showed off yesterday that I think also goes along with this is the notion of wireless charging. We're talking about wireless charging of wearables and devices, but we're doing this Formula E thing, and we're going to be wireless charging the support cars originally, and then later on the race cars are going to be wirelessly charged, and there's going to be coils where you park, there's going to be coils in the street, and when you drive along, you're going to get power that way. And you need communications for that because you got to buy the power.
It's always interesting, Andrew, when you answer a question like that, the best demonstration is where you tell your kids to go spend their time. And it's interesting because I'll tell you where I put my money where my mouth is. My son is studying biomedical engineering, and he wants to get into brain-controlled prosthetics. And so you take a kid, he's smart, he's driven, he's, and you put him there, and to Paul's view, that's where we think the world is going. And for my daughter, I said, you know what, you're more of an artist. She's in user experience design because it's about how do you make these things approachable and usable in user interface. And I think those kinds of things, I've never seen an opportunity that's more target-rich than right now. I'd like to be young again, for many reasons.
Well, you're going to come and talk at my son's school, right? You agreed to do that.
Yeah, I agreed to do that, and all you have to do is pick a date.
So one of the enough from
That's
these fancy types up here. One of the nice things about FutureCast is we have some fancy types down there as well. And we're going to have some questions from the audience. We're lucky enough to have some very distinguished people here. Perhaps the most distinguished friend of mine who's been on my TechCrunch show, Jessica Rosen Corwell. I always pronounce it wrong, Jessica. You might introduce yourself. She is an FCC commissioner. We're honored to have her, and I thought she could kick off with a question.
Terrific. Thank you for having me here. Let me say that when you talk about mobile everything, I think about spectrum. And spectrum, of course, is a limited resource. So my question is this: do we have enough that is purposed for mobile commercial use? And if we don't, what technologies like small cells are going to help us use it more efficiently?
Serious question. Who wants to start?
Customer first, customer first. Now, I think that, of course, if you look at the data growth and exponentially, you look at how many new smartphones coming in, the usage of the networks, new services, of course, spectrum going to be a limitation for sure. So you need to work in a couple of different ways. First of all, we that spend a lot of money on understanding how we can optimize the spectrum usage better and better, carrier aggregation, using spectrum at the same time, a lot of other ways of actually using it that we will do. The other is, of course, there is a lot of spectrum on lower bands and higher bands that has to be used in the future, because this is, I'm thinking about the infrastructure and spectrum. That's from a country point of view, that infrastructure is going to be equally important, or I wouldn't say equal, but will be extremely important for a country's sort of GDP development, etc. in the future. So of course you need to think about that as you think about how do I build my roads, how do I build other public services. The spectrum has to be there in order to get new services. So I think that from our point of view, yes, it has to be more spectrum. You need to go out in the bands and get more of it, so definitely. But we will also do our part from our industry, where we are spending a lot of research and development to optimize the spectrum to use it. So if we do that together, you can manage it, but you need to release more spectrum for sure. That's my definite comment.
Spectrum is it's the lifeblood of an industry that's the oxygen for commerce. And the important thing, which I think the United States market has gotten very right, is to really thinking about the focus on getting investment. Investment brings jobs, jobs brings more innovation, and then all of a sudden you see the wireless centricity, the access of it moves into an ecosystem in the US, and all of the carriers in the US are really pushing ahead. The worst thing we could do is get a mismatch between an investment horizon that says I'm going to buy all of his gear, that contains all of his chips, and I want it to last 10 years, but I only have 4 years of spectrum. That uncertainty gets you to dabble with the formula. And so there is an insatiable desire for spectrum, and I think that in the long term, we're going to have to wrestle with a number of these things. And I'll just tell you, from our standpoint, the benefits of small cells, the benefits of spectrum pooling, the spectrum of, or the benefits of using more techniques to get more of the unnecessary stuff off the network are not enough to overcome the difference between our investment cycle and how much we see of spectrum coming down the pike. So we just hope, I mean, our hope is that we're able as a country to keep enough spectrum available so that we can get innovative new business models to keep us marching ahead. Because the more your home gets automated, your car gets automated, the more the kids are able to do on-the-fly translation and do languages and get software upgrades, that they're able to get, better vision or more peripheral context and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's fundamental. It's jobs. It's really great stuff for America.
Paul, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trends are pretty unmistakable, that we're seeing broader bandwidth and denser networks, and that's all about getting more bandwidth to and from the devices. And as we talk about the Internet of Everything, there's going to be even more devices. And today we're doing carrier aggregation in LTE, and we had a 300 megabits per second chips, but that's sort of the peak rates. And then when you start loading the network down, then what the actual rate that somebody gets is less than that. So we have this idea of the 1000x. We're going to increase the capacity of the networks by 1000x. We're going to reduce the cost of generating the bits by something like that. And part of that is densification, but part of that is we got to open up more spectrum. And I think as we go to gigabit per second links, we're just going to have to go to much higher frequencies. Yeah. So,
well, let's go to the...
Just for the record, I do know how to pronounce your last name.
Rosenwarsaw. Yes?
There you go. You got it.
I get... Can I do this again next year? But no,
possibly,
no answer.
Possibly.
Well, let's take advantage of spectrum. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Sitting next to Jessica is another good friend of mine, Tiffany Schlein. Tiffany was the founder of the Wearables. Now she's a very successful movie producer for AOL, a number of other networks. Tiffany, why is wireless and mobile so important from a creative point of view? You have an opportunity to ask these guys, what do you want from them that they're not giving, or what are you happy that they're giving you?
Thank you for letting me ask that. Let's see, I'm so curious because I hear different numbers from everyone of when you all think everyone on the planet who wants to be online will be online. That's kind of part A. And at my film studio, we make what we call cloud films. So they're very collaborative from people all over the world. And a lot of people watch, I have a new series called The Future Starts Here, and a lot of people, 19 million views, are on mobile. So what are your thoughts? So part one is, when is everyone going to be online? Part two is, what do you see with the future of the film industry in mobile and broadband?
I can start. We do the Ericsson Mobility Report every 6 months, which is basically outlining subscriptions, data usage in all countries in the world. We are in 180 countries. Our prediction right now for 2019 is basically 91 to 92% of the Earth population will have mobile coverage. So you're still going to have some 7-8% that doesn't have mobile coverage by 2019. Then after that, we are now looking into how we can come to there. So it's still going to be some 6-7% that doesn't have mobile coverage by 2019. However, 85% of the Earth population will have 3G coverage by 2019.
And I hope Ericsson will be providing all of that.
Absolutely. So that means that that's a huge number going, not only having voice, but having data. And that's sort of going enormously quickly. We can see that from two reasons. One, of course, seeing the deployment of equipment going out in the world, and secondly, seeing where the devices will go, when the prices will go, and affordability. We have a rule of thumb, basically saying for every $10 you can reduce the price on a smartphone, 100 million people can buy that. That's the sensitivity on a smartphone. And many of us sitting here and, hey, everyone has a smartphone. That's not true. It's still fairly few on the planet that has a smartphone today that can access data services through a connected device. So that is going to happen in the next 5 years. So in 25 years, we have come where we are today. In 5 years, it's going to be 3 times as much. So the speed of change and those innovators on top of the network is going to have a tremendous opportunity years to come with everything you mentioned in your second question that might these gentlemen.
Maybe we should just have free cell phones and then we could all have them. Shh.
He has some free cell phones, I think. Got to sign up for a contract.
Paul? Paul,
he'd be happy to give you some.
For free cell phone?
Yeah, if you sign up the contract.
Tiffany wanted to know what you're doing for the creatives.
So we're doing a lot of work on multimedia, and you can actually use your devices today to capture and view Ultra HD content. And there isn't a lot of professional Ultra HD stuff out there, but on your phone you can actually do that stuff. Yep. So I would love to see more professional stuff get done and use these technologies that we're pushing out there. And then the question is, how do you ship all those bits around? And I think what's going to happen in the future is that there's going to be data stores in the world around us, because even today, just carrying bits actually is it's higher latency, but it's higher bandwidth to actually carry a big amount of bits from one place to another. And I think that may be the way some stuff gets done, this kind of super distribution. You walk into an environment, bits are shared back and forth, whether it's a hard drive that's sitting in the wall, or it's your phone and my phone talk to each other. And so we are going to be able to solve the problem of getting huge amounts of bits back and forth. So you guys should build that content and use those high def things.
John, when is everyone in America going to be online?
Well, as soon as we can get them there. I think, Andrew, it's interesting because when I talk about global leadership, our companies get together and we hash out problems, and we push Paul's team to get us chipsets for WCS Spectrum, and Hans's team to find us, But every once in a while we come back and say, okay, Paul's team is an impediment to getting to 50 billion devices because he's got to make chips materially cheaper. Architecturally, how can you build a hub and spoke model where an expensive chip could sit in a home and handle 100 little cheap things that are sitting around? How does one architect for that? And then with Hans's team with the small cell there, we've been at that problem now for what, 3 years?
3 years.
Banging it to try to make it, easier to install, more coordinate. But those things work their way very quickly into developed countries, into rural areas as fundamental solutions, because where we're driving for connected cars is going to have huge benefits into overall. But as far as the media stuff goes, I think that to Paul's point, I think that we have some amazing technology today that frankly isn't getting used as much as it could. I am a left brain person that has not a whole lot of creativity, but I carry a 41 megapixel
Well, he's got
camera.
the solution for you.
No, I understand, but I carry a 41 megapixel camera, and all of a sudden I'm talking about making coffee table books with my photos. Yep. So, it's a different world.
Well, speaking of a different world, we've mentioned the hackathon a few times. It was really a wonderful event. I was a judge, which made it particularly wonderful. We are lucky enough, honored in fact, to have some of the winners of the hackathon in the front row. And actually, not all of them will speak. If there are media here want to interview them afterwards, I'm sure they'll be around. But the young lady at the front, Laura, might introduce yourself very, very briefly. Laura, tell us, you were one of the winners. You won, what, $20,000. You had a remarkably innovative product. And you might just say very, very briefly, in 20 seconds, what it is. And then you may have a question for these gentlemen.
Okay, Safe Necklace is a wearable device.
And you might introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Laura. Nice to meet you all. Can you hear me now? All right. Hi, I'm Laura Jensen, and Safe Necklace is a wearable device and a mobile app that ensures children don't get lost on field trips by alerting the teacher or chaperone right away when a child wanders off. SafeNecklace.com, and we did use the Qualcomm beacon.
Wow.
Thank you.
Do you think wearables hold the same promise that mobile apps did in 2009, and do you think it's going to be that kind of scale or go far beyond that?
Paul?
Oh, I mean, I'm a huge believer in wearables, because it's not just for things that people talk, you talk about like the Fitbits and those kinds of things that are doing sort of wellness stuff, but the thing I actually have learned from wearing the talk is that it's all the notifications that I get. It's like created this sort of continuous interaction model for me. So I walk into a room, I can get notifications of the phone. I did a demo at our analyst day. We had an air conditioner that Hire did that had an all-joint connection on it, and it told my watch when I walked out of the room and left the air conditioner on, so I could turn it off right there. Or I get sports scores there, or breaking news to it. And that kind of stuff, the fact that I'm interacting all the time with the world around me, with cyberspace and stuff, I think that's going to make wearables really exciting to people. Now, it's going to piss some other people off, obviously.
Who?
People who don't like you being distracted when you're talking to them, for example. But sometimes, you can, it's stealthy, it's a watch, so you can kind of just glance down and see what's going on and that kind of stuff. But then I think also integrated with more of the sensors that you wear on your body, or even, we're doing this work, here's another thing that'll blow you away. So we're doing a clinical trial in San Diego of a sensor that will actually get injected into your bloodstream and tell you 2 weeks ahead of time that you're going to have a heart attack. So imagine something like that. I mean, you want to get that phone call because they can help you before you have the heart attack and your heart muscle dies. That's actually a good phone call to get, believe it or not. But that kind of stuff's going to happen. So wearables will not just be on our bodies and in the environment and so forth. They're going to be inside our bodies too.
John, wearables? Yes or no?
The older I get, the more the quantitative me is more interesting than the real me. So I'm all for it.
All for it, Hans?
Yeah.
In Sweden, are they going to do wearables?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2009 or 10, I believe, we came out with a vision of 50 billion connected devices 2020, and everybody was asking us, how did you count? And there was a lot of discussion. I mean, now I don't think anybody is even doubting it's going to be 50 billion connected devices. So yes, we are all for it. It's going to be sensors, the remote control will be part of the smartphones, and it's going to be a lot of those things that you are talking about here, Laura. So yes, definitely. And that's how we need to build the networks as well. So they know, they acknowledge different sensors need higher priority. I mean, I really want that signal to go through. If it's true that I can get knowing 2 weeks ahead, I don't want that to be blocked or something. So we also need to think about different sensors, or just think about having cars that actually going to get alerts, you're going to break the car or something, then you need a very good latency between the cars. You don't want to get the signal too late and you're already crashed.
Jessica, I hope you're listening to all this. We need it. Final question. We have another gentleman in the front who I thought had a wonderful product at the hackathon. And this is, I wouldn't say a more serious product, but it was it shows, even to sometimes a skeptic like myself, what mobile technology can do. You might introduce yourself and very briefly tell us, what was your product called, Simon Says?
Yes, so my name is Alex Poon, and we created for the hackathon, we created a product called Simon Signs. And the idea is that we use the accelerometer in a smartwatch. We combined it with AT&T's text-to-speech API. And the idea is that it becomes your sign language practice partner. So it prompts you with a word or a phrase to do like, I love you. You actually perform the sign, and the watch's accelerometer tells you whether or not you got it right. And it continues on and on and on. I had a question for you guys. So as you guys talk more about smart machines and brains that are better than humans' vision and upgrading yourself with machines, how realistic is the Terminator Skynet scenario, where machines are actually calling the shots? Is it complete fantasy and science fiction, or is it something that we should be wary about?
It's a great question, and this is the final question. And this is a key question. You each have a minute to answer, and as human beings rather than machines. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I think you said the Terminator model. There's the Terminator model and the Superman model. And I think what we're after is Iron Man, which is to take a mere mortal and provide them all of these other things that gives them superpowers, but the ability to open it up and walk away and be human for a day. I don't think we're trying to create Supermen or Terminators, and I think of it more as context than it is revolution, and at the center of you is context. And so what I'm most enthused about is the leveling of the playing field between those that are born not with the software that allows them to be mathematically impaired or impaired language-wise. The flattening that occurs as a result of that will put us on a new level of consciousness. I think that it will get us to be better people. So I look at it as an enabler that's going to make the place better.
Paul, can we be made better?
There's no question. I mean, people have already done research. There's an MIT researcher that showed that they trained a rat to run a maze, and they hooked it up to one of these digital brains, a very primitive one. And then they eliminated the part of the brain that remembered the maze. Without the digital brain connected, it couldn't run the maze. They reconnected the digital brain, and it could run the maze again. So the future's already here in terms of that kind of stuff. Now, it's not sophisticated enough. It's not something that you would do to yourself anytime
I
soon.
tried that last week. It hurts.
Yeah, you don't really like people drilling holes in your head. You know, it's just not that good. But no, but seriously, I think the sky's the limit, really. Now, whether machines become self-aware and the singularity happens, I mean, that's a pretty deep topic, and probably I can't do it much justice in a minute. But anyways, it's
well, you can try.
That talk about consciousness and all that stuff. I think maybe we'll hold that for another panel.
Well, maybe you'll be available afterwards to talk about consciousness. Hans, one writer very famously said, the future is already here, it's just not very equally distributed. How are you going to, in terms of this question, perhaps you might sum up this panel, because we've talked about a lot of these issues, but how are we going to distribute technology, both literally and metaphorically, more equally?
I think that one of the great things with our industry is, of course, that we have created standards, technology. We use the same sort of technology all around the world. That brings down the cost enormously, and that's why this technology, and that's why it's 7 billion mobile subscriptions today, because whatever phone you have here today could work in any country in the world. And that's just amazing, and sometimes we don't realize that we have done that. And that also caters for that we will continue to be able to take down cost, so this can be distributed. And as this infrastructure also becomes more and more important for the development of countries, I spend more and more time with governments all around the world to tell them that, hey, it's great to have spectrum and broadband, but also what type of services you as a country are going to have. Mobile health, mobile education, in order to develop your country. That's going to be a key to the future. And I think that we don't want to create any terminates or whatever, but efficiency, getting better spread of richness and wellness and health all around the world can be helped by technology, will not be solved. And that's really what is exciting me and my colleagues at Ericsson, that network society will have a huge impact on our society. And that we need to take care of and see that the technology is going to help as well. So it's, of course, we as users, then it's business people that's going to take care of it, but the society really needs technology revolution in order to actually cope with some of the huge challenges that we have on Earth today. And I think that's what exciting me every day.
Exciting, stirring words. I want to thank you three guys. Tremendous discussion. Will you be available afterwards to talk to people?
Yes.
Sure. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.